Well, good morning, everybody. It's like 11 o'clock on the 30th of May, 2025, and it's a Friday. And I mentioned yesterday a lot about drones. There's a lot of drone activity. It just keeps increasing more and more and more. And, I mentioned also that it, started off, remember, with Obama and his drone strikes where he loved to bomb children playing soccer. Well, mostly he loved bombing weddings. He did children playing soccer, I think, one or two times. But mostly he liked to bomb weddings. He did a lot of weddings. It's like they had this movie called The Wedding Crashers, and you can make one with Obama called The Wedding Bomber. Anyway, but anyway, this it just keeps on increasing. A lot of these drone strikes, and now Zelensky's very proud, as I said, of his strikes with swarms. So now he's able to use drone swarms, and I think maybe it was the first time, and maybe why it was kind of unsuccessful is when he was using a drone swarm against Vladimir Putin, trying to assassinate him when Vladimir Putin was visiting the Kursk region. So, but in spite of that, I mentioned the thousands of drone strikes that they've been increasing, and Zelensky said he wants to have at least 500 drone strikes each and every day, and which means normally against civilians. There was a drone strike, like again last night, against civilian infrastructure, like he's liking to do apparently now, because they obviously realize they cannot defeat the Russian military in a fair fight, so they're resorting to terrorism, and it's supposed to have the different effect, anyway, I talked about it yesterday. You'd have to watch that footage. I don't want to get into all this stuff, a couple times. Okay, and there has been a meeting in Moscow, I guess, the last 3 days. I didn't even really know what it was about. I always see these people getting up and talking in front of the press, like Sergei Lavrov or anybody else. But what this one was about, it's trying to create a new, or at least trying to find out information beforehand about creating a new global security architecture. I guess this is probably prodded on by Vladimir Putin, and he says he wants to do it without compromising the safety or the interests of other nations. So, and the security infrastructure is not very great right now. And one topic that they were talking about, that countries are seeing that the United Nations peacekeepers, for example, are involved in human trafficking. Human trafficking. Actually, this is kind of look at this, a nice peaceful area, nice trees, nice shade, huge tree over there. Sorry to interrupt myself, but it just looks like a nice place. A lot of days, probably you don't get the direct sun. Some old building there that's probably going to be needing to be upgraded very soon. They're doing most of them in this area. Takes a while, takes years for them to be doing, and they slowly getting all buildings. If you would have been here in the early days, like maybe 2000, not so bad in Minsk, but in a lot of other places, you couldn't believe that people lived in the buildings, but the government has really done a lot of renovation. This is just a storage area right here. I don't even know who's responsible for this, to be honest with you, what peoples or whatever. I don't think they're doing this. Maybe they'll do that at some point in time when they get most of these other buildings done. I'll walk around the front here anyhow of this thing. It's nice because it's all brick and not covered. Okay, but anyway, these peacekeepers apparently for the United Nations are into human trafficking, and of course that normally means mostly children. So they're trafficking children, and I was talking quite a bit, and other people talk about it, and it's like a taboo subject about Ukraine is very much into a lot of this kind of stuff, but a lot of these these things that I would say, let's see, is obviously some money changing hands here. If you remember, well, maybe even if you see today and you've heard about this information about the World Health Organization, the WHO, and well, who is the biggest single contributor to that? Oh, it's old Billy Gates. Bill Gates happens to be a very, very rich guy, and it seems like a lot of the policies that are made concerning the World Health Organization, which is very powerful, and they make deals with governments, to include a lot in China, I guess. China also puts in a lot of money, but I don't see that as necessarily being bad. But anyway, Bill Gates, and then they're coming up with these draconian measures, and I guess they've even signed some recently. I don't even remember quite what they are, but in case of a pandemic, that the World Health Organization, I believe that's what it was, has full authority in certain places to impose whatever the heck they want to. It wasn't the case before. It kind of was slowly coming into that in the Corona days, but oh, my throat, I got a frog in my throat. Just trying to climb out. But as far as like these UN peacekeepers and all that sort of deal, and you see a lot of this money flowing to Zelensky, which is taxpayer money, and you know, you see George Soros, how he's buying a lot of like legal professionals, DAs, judges all over the United States, and he's got his own agendas going too. So much to talk about on that. But when you look at this also, you can assume that with these peacekeepers, that there are some people with some money and they have their interests as well. And it makes you really wonder how these people would be complicit in human trafficking as well, because you would think maybe a lot of these people that are on here should be humanistic type peoples and want to actually act like peacekeepers and not acting like whatever the heck they are actually doing. And of course, money is changing hands like it always is. And now you can just start looking at the money. You always have to think of money. When you see something that does not quite seem to work, you look at the money. And that's what a big difference things are, like say when you look at countries like Belarus or Russia, where the government is actually in charge. So you see things happening, and it does benefit people, but it doesn't necessarily do that in some of these Western countries. And you have to realize, you know, that money is so very, very important. Of course, it's important to everybody, but over here, these people are elected and they actually care about their countries. I don't know China. I haven't been to China, but I'm kind of assuming China as well, and maybe other countries. But lots of people have their own prices, as you guys know, and politicians, like say in the United States, they need a lot of money to campaign. They need a lot of money. And Ukraine is their own deal. Everybody knows about that massive corruption, lots of money changing hands for all sorts of different things. And Ukraine, of course, is probably tied to this United Nations deal here, because there's also narcotics involved with these peacekeepers. And I can imagine that it's also weapons. There are weapons, and it's already been put out that it's very strange that you know, even in Africa, and maybe even in some of the better countries, like maybe in the Sahel, that somehow there's a lot of these weapons that are getting sent to Ukraine. Somehow they're ending up in Africa. How in the heck could that be happening? You know? Wow. And yet there's a lot of people getting rich in the Ukraine, very rich in Ukraine. Like I said, to the point of buying luxury Rolls Royces. The biggest market for luxury Rolls Royce automobiles is Ukraine, by the way. That's just Rolls Royce. You can go into all kinds of other products, and I'm sure it's also very big in Ukraine. But you know, the ones where you have to have few people that have lots of money, such as Rolls Royce. Okay. Like I said, Bill Gates, he was involved there. What about NIH? And NIH, what about them? What about in China? Makes you really wonder, how do they transfer all of this research into China? I think it's probably right under the nose of China. I don't really understand it all. I don't know. But whatever. And then you also got to remember the white helmets. Remember the white helmets, and then trying to set up Assad for gassing his own people, when of course he had nothing to do with that. And of course it was actually some kind of chlorine gas or something. It wasn't really that lethal. And the people treating the people that were poisoned with this gas, they weren't wearing any protective equipment whatsoever. And the children, I think, and their eyes were all watering and things like that. And they're talking about Assad gassing his own people. And yeah, nobody has any protective gear, and yet they're doing this sort of thing. And it happened to be on the same day that the UN inspectors were in Syria. But you guys all know this. This is how this stuff is all set up. And then U.S. aid, as I also mentioned, I think in the past few videos, that the EU, since Donald Trump has defunded them, of course the EU is now funding the U.S. aid. It's kind of strange. Why don't they just call it the EU aid or something now, instead of the what do you call it, the U.S. aid? And then you have Voice of America. Why don't they call it Voice of Europe? But they do have a Radio Free Europe. And of course, that's what's strange about that one, is that was funded and completely under the control of the United States, but yet they called it Radio Free Europe. I guess maybe because the target was Europe at that time. Mainly, of course, Belarus and Ukraine and all that in those days, but they won over Ukraine already, as you guys know. And then you got to think of all these other money corporations like BlackRock and Monsanto, and they have a very much power, and they own a lot of what's going on in Ukraine, buying land, sending in the crops. I remember I made a visit to Bulgaria back in, when was that? That was pretty early. That was maybe 2003 or 2002 or 2 or 3, something about that time. And there was a lot of controversy going on there that Monsanto had flooded the place with their seeds, maybe with Terminator genes and all sorts of things like that. They've already destroyed a lot of India with their cotton. Monsanto cotton seeds, a lot of people have gone broke, gone bankrupt, their farms and things, because you have to buy the Monsanto seed. I mean, boy, what is it, that movie? I think I was... Shut up! I was talking about some movie, I think it's called Seeds of Destruction, and it talks about that. I don't know, Monsanto still seems to be alive and well, I believe. Bill Gates, as you know, is a huge shareholder in Monsanto, and Monsanto is big in Ukraine, like I said. So, okay. But anyway, I'm just talking about how a lot of this stuff works, and money changing hands and everything is influenced. And this also goes with human trafficking and the United Nations. People are for sale. I knew a guy, and I tell you what, I was in the university, and he's from Austria, and his parents are involved in the United Nations. They're diplomats for Austria. And I wish I was there now. I would obviously be asking. Well, it wasn't in my class, but I would like to ask him a lot of these questions. But instead, as you noticed, they say that Putin is into child trafficking. Putin and Lukashenko. We don't have any evidence, but trust us, that's the truth. Our evidence is Ukraine told us that. Gosh. So, and Ukraine, they wouldn't lie to you. Okay. But it's been proven. It's been a proven fact. I think even recently, I might have mentioned in a video that, there's been a lot of child trafficking, and I think part of it is, obviously going through Poland, because you have to go through Poland to get to Germany, and it's Germany and Ukraine linked together in child trafficking, and it's been put out by witnesses, people that have lost their children. They go on a bus to Germany from Ukraine, and I believe if they get off the bus, or when they get off the bus, the children are immediately separated from them. They never see their children again. I'm not saying everybody. Maybe there's certain ones, maybe they know which ones, and they say, and then they know in Ukraine, they know, and maybe in Poland, and by the time they get to Germany, somebody's waiting there with a bus is going to offload these people, and I don't know. I'm just guessing. That's normally a lot of the time how things work. It's terrible stuff, terrible stuff. Like I said, I've heard a lot of things in my lifetime, but that's possibly how that works. But anyway, about the weapons trafficking and things like that. I was also reading that, just for your information, and this is another little piece, it has nothing to do with what I was just now talking about, but I wrote it here in a note because I saw that later. But I guess Iran permanently suspended anything and everything to do with doing nuclear weapons back in 2003, and I think before that time, for a large period of time, they were not making nuclear weapons, but they were looking into what if they did, and maybe it's trying to see, well, what is needed and how it's done and all that, and they were doing that. But this very evil Khomeini said that we will have nothing to do with any weapons of mass destruction. So that includes, of course, this nuclear stuff. So that there's a big fatwa, a big ban on that. You cannot be into creating any types of weapons of mass destruction. It's not like the United States, of course, or Israel is even involved in that, with nuclear weapons and all that. I don't know. I guess Iran believes that they don't really need a nuclear weapon, and it's in truth, you would think. I'll tell you what, you can even look at this as practice. What's going on right now is Israel practicing. You would think that purposefully massacring tens of thousands of children is actually a big taboo. And, the world community wouldn't put up with that. But Israel is getting away with it, and everybody knows about it. And some people are turning away from that. I guess if you're in the United States government and Trump's administration, you have to act like that's fine and dandy, or that it's not happening at all. I don't know. And I don't know. So, but you never know. They might start to use nuclear weapons because they're getting away with doing atrocities to children and to people. So they can maybe get away with that as well. And say, well, we'll just drop a couple nukes here and there. The only thing they have to worry about is the fallout. If the fallout reaches in a cloud some other state such as Germany, or well, it wouldn't be Germany, it would probably be something like Turkey, or, well, of course they don't really care that much about Turkey. Wherever the cloud floats, anyway. Yeah. So anyway, what else in that conference? Let's see. Oh, I talked about the peacekeepers. Okay, and they're facilitating weapons transferred. I talked about that already from Ukraine. Maria Zakharova, she was on a talk show host, and she was saying how Zelensky, I mean, this is just like a perspective, and it's a different way to be saying this, how Zelensky has sold his army to NATO. And I didn't think about it. It's like I said, it's more like a perspective, and a lot of the information is already known, maybe known to everybody here that watches these videos. But, seeing his army and sending all these people off as cannon fodder, knowing that most all of them are going to die. They're going to die, going to be bombarded by Russian artillery. And he knows that, but he just keeps on sending them. And I guess it's believing he can block Russia's, advance with bodies, and just give them enough weapons, I guess, to slow Russia down a little bit. I don't know, they're still regaining a lot of the territory that they lost, and new territories as well. But Maria Zakharova on the show, she said he'd sold his army, and she said he did it long ago. So like I said, it's cannon fodder. And of course, like Lindsey Graham said, he was very, very happy that Ukraine is killing Russians. And I don't know, it's like some say that there are not enough Russians getting killed, like I said, Kaya Kallas. We need to kill more Russian children. She said that. I forgot about that, and it was just reminded to me. But I saw her myself. It was no deep fake, nothing like that. So that's how that was put out. Let's see, what else? Let's see. Oh, and he's getting money for drones in exchange for sending his people to this near certain death. So he gets money for drones, he gets weapons, and I guess he's having a good old time with that old Zelensky for using his people as cannon fodder. So maybe 4 or 5 Ukrainians die, and they can kill one Russian. So maybe the ratio is fine with him, and they just keep rounding. They got this good system. They keep rounding people up off the streets. Now they're sending women, apparently, and they keep lowering the age. But that's a lot of people, even at the very beginning, were like 17 and 18 years old that were fighting in this military as well. Not so many 17, but of course 18-year-olds and things. I don't know if there was a policy of drafting them. I don't think so, but some of them obviously volunteered and they accepted them. But apparently now that's part of the policy, is to go for 18-year-olds. And I said, like yesterday, and they're failing students in school. 50% of the boys that are in school are supposed to be failed. And it actually is supposed to have a way to force them into going into the military conscription. I think it supposedly makes them immediately eligible for military subscription. So that's why they're snapping them up off the streets at those ages. And you see a lot of these videos. Every day there's new videos coming up. And a lot of times men, I don't know, not my age, normally not this old, but like 40 years old. But they're very often, a lot of them are actually getting away. So that's a good thing, I suppose. Okay. And think about this. What is Zelensky's main purpose? Obviously, he wants victory. Of course, that is the big purpose. But there's the sub-purpose. Sub-purpose for this, obviously, as you guys all know, Mama didn't raise no dummies, is to get to get the United States involved in these wars. And of course, he pretty much has locked a commitment from a lot of these countries in Europe. He's got their commitment, but a lot of them are very hesitant. And if the United States actually does join in and even become much more supportive, sending even more weapons and more money, then of course they will dive in, face first right into this stuff. They want to go in, and Lithuania has said they want to be a part of whatever force is that is going to be attacking Russia. So anyway, Zelensky, his hope is for that. He wants the United States involved, and of course, if that happens, of course it'll first be on Ukrainian territory, and then it'll start moving into Russia. Well, Ukraine is already, I think they're showing that they can move into Russia. So that's what that whole thing is always about. That's why they're going into Kursk, into Belgorod, and places like that, is to show that they can get into Russian territory. So just so you guys know that. Some people, I don't know if they want this video pointed at them, so I gotta try to keep things pointed in a different way here. Okay. But the same goal is the same goal in the EU and the UK. They also want Russia involved, and they've made that clear. And Merz, like I said, a lot of people talking about Merz lately on the Russian side here, that he is really trying to push a war, trying to get a war going. Oh, there's that cat again. I guess he's got a long area. If you guys can see it, fuzzy cat over there in the distance. I've taken a picture of him. I think he's got an injured eye or a damaged eye from fighting. I don't have any cat food. I'll just get closer so you guys can see him. He's a fluffy tiger cat. What's up? Why? Well, he looks like he wants to be friendly. If I came out with some food, of course, he might even come to me. Anyway, I'm sure it's a he. Okay. But of course, the EU's interests, Ukraine's interest is their ideology. They want to kill Russians, because they're all raised to want to kill Russians. And like I said, there's even some here in Belarus that they do that. Some of these people, they hate the government here. And I said that there is, I guess, a guy, you go to his house, he's trained his 6-year-old child to say, kill Russians, kill all Russians, kill all Russians, things like that. So, like I'm telling you, it's a lot of this, it's a psyop operation, and it's like an avalanche effect. And they get the people to go along with it. They get enough people convinced, and get press, get teachers and universities and things like that. So you get a snowball effect. And these people, if you start asking them, well, why? Why do you, they can't come up with any real reasons, and they think that there's some sort of a milk and honey land in the east, in the west, and that the Russians are all bad and everything is bad under Russia. And like I said, I've seen some expats, Americans, that come over here, and we talk about that, and it's like we shake our heads, and it's like a lot of them. We shake our heads, and the guy said immediately when I met this one guy, 1 minute had not even gone by, and he said Belarusians need to get out more. They need to go to the West and find out what it's like over there, and then come back here. And I try to get into these discussions. As a matter of fact, yesterday I got into a discussion with online with some Belarusian woman. I'm not even sure how old she was or whatever. I can't remember. It wasn't important. But anyway, and she was asking me, well, you don't know how it is. And I keep, hearing this. But I said, well, then tell me how it is. Well, tell me how it is. And nobody can tell me how bad it is. And it's like, well, why is it bad? I don't see this stuff. You see people have homes. They're not living on the streets, living in tents like in America in a lot of places, or doing drugs all over on the streets like in so many cities in the United States, or having grooming gangs get their daughters into being paid prostitutes and going into gang rapes and things like that. I mean, so why is it so bad here? And I can vouch for things, a lot of times the pay is very low here in a lot of ways, but of course so are the costs, and a lot of time it's hard to make. This matter of fact, I remember now what this lady was saying. I don't know if it was a girl or lady, saying she wants to travel, and I don't really know how old she is. I don't know what her job is. I don't know anything about her, and she's saying that was the bad thing, you know, that she feels like she can't travel. And then I started remembering, well, when I was in Germany, I'm a dental technician, you know, and I was working it for like, at that time, I think I was in it for, I don't know, maybe two years or something, 2 or 3 years. And I didn't have enough friggin' money to travel. I lived in an apartment up in the attic areas where you have slanted roofs. It's like the smallest apartment in the building. And I shut my water heater off during the day and only turned it on for, you know, because the prices are so high. And I only turned it on, you know, like maybe an hour before I wanted, and we couldn't take a shower because the roofs, they had no shower head and you had to take a bath. You're forced to do that. Sit in the bathtub. You can't even stand up in the bathtub. So I was, you know, you're forced to do that. But then you have to heat up the water in the water heater thing for like maybe an hour or two in advance. And then you take a bath, you know, to save the money because it costs way too much. You know, I mean, it was at that time, I think I was like, back then, it was 70 euros a month. And then even I was making decent money, so to speak. I was in a Meister position as a dental technician. I was in a Meister position, not a regular worker position, in a Meister position. So I was getting pretty damn good money, and I'd worked extra hours. And I found out, you know, I tell you what, I was doing 20,000 euros worth of work. I'm not getting paid that. 20,000 euros worth of work, and it was like, I could get around almost 2,000 euros a month. Around that much, not quite. And then there was like a time I worked extra hard. I worked 7 days a week, many hours, like 12 hours or something on most of those days. And then I did 30,000 euros worth of work. And I got 200 euros more on my paycheck because the taxes took all the rest of that money. So I got like 200 euros more. And it's like, what the friggin' crap? And then there's a girl in that place, well, lady, I guess. I think has a daughter. She's a wife of some. And she worked half days. And she got, let's say, I had to work my butt off to get 2,000. I was doing the high value work. She was doing the cheap work. And she was getting like her salary part. I was actually getting a salary and a little bit of because I did all that extra work. And she was just getting the salary part, half days, and she was getting 1,600 for half days. And I had to work my butt off to get like 1,900 or 2,000 euros. And then, you know, that's how it works. And then you got to, we made a vacation to Bulgaria, and it took us like 2 years, nearly 2 years to save up enough money to go take a, I don't know if it was 10 days or 2-week vacation to Bulgaria, you know, to save up that much money. And then here's this girl here complaining, or lady or whatever the heck, oh, we can't travel, I want to travel, you know, and she's thinking, because, you know, you see maybe Europeans coming over here, so she's thinking that all Europeans get to travel all over the place, all over the world and all that. You know, most of them take these package deals, you know, and once I took a package deal, I was working, where was I? I was working somewhere else, and it was like to Malta, you know, and it was much cheaper. You know, you have to take these package deals or something like that. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, there's even, get this, I saw, and it was advertised here, I don't know about visas. Visas, they cost money. And well, as a matter of fact, this lady was saying, oh, the visas are expensive. But is that Belarus? Is that Belarus charging you for a European visa, or is that Europe charging you for a European visa? So who are you complaining to? Why don't you complain to those people over there in Europe? You know, I think she was talking about a Schengen visa. I think she said something like 500 euros. I'm not sure. Like I said, it was just yesterday, and I should remember. I think it was 500 euros, she said. But Belarus isn't charging you that. And do you have to go to Belarus? Well, then why don't you instead friggin' go to China or something? It's much farther away. You don't have to pay that. Probably a lot cheaper. No, you have to go to Europe. Traveling is only Europe, I'd guess. I don't know. Going into like a rant right now, by the way. You know, by these people complaining here. And, you know, and I guess they're blaming the government. You know, I don't know. But anyway, the tour, I was talking about a tour, and I think, I'm not sure if it was 1 week or 2 weeks, but it was like 550 Belarusian rubles, you know, to take a bus, which is terrible. I don't like that. But 550 on a trip to Europe. And that you go through like not only like maybe Poland, I'm not sure which country, which one of these Nazi countries that you can go through is either Poland or Lithuania or Latvia, I don't know. But then, you know, you go to Germany. I don't know. I don't think it was Denmark. So Germany, and then you also go to Italy and all that. And it's like 550 euros or 550 rubles. Rubles. Well, what is that? You know, that's less than 200 euros. And then you probably pay a lot more than in Germany than you do here. So what does she have to complain about? Why don't you look for these deals? Why don't you go traveling? That's not Belarus's fault that you have to pay that much for a visa there. Take a trip somewhere else. Go to Abkhazia. Beautiful place. You can even go to Sochi, Russia. Boy, oh boy. It's like expensive like Germany, I guess, in Sochi, I've heard. But matter of fact, somebody from Sochi told me that in Germany. You know, she's living in Germany, and she said that Sochi, Russia is also expensive. So that was just a little bit of a rant there. I'll keep going more here. Anyway, so I was talking about the goals of these people. The goal, obviously, you know, they're talking about the strategic defeat of Russia, but it's not necessarily that. Of course, what they want to, before that, they want the economic defeat of Russia. And of course, Donald Trump is even threatening to do that. You kind of do what I want you to do, or else. I think he's going to be threatening secondary sanctions, you know, which means sanction any country that does any, and a matter of fact, he said that, any country that does any business with Russia. Makes you wonder what that is going to bring. Okay. And, well, Europe wants to come in and get some of these resources from Russia. Germany has made it clear they want the lithium from Donbass, and Donald Trump made this deal supposedly with Zelensky, and I think he's going to get the lithium and the rare earth minerals and things like that. So that's why Germany was really pissed off at Donald Trump there for a little while, and the United States is also trying to take over the nuclear power plant, and of course it's not going to be toward selling nuclear energy to Russia. That he would be the one that would be collecting the money for sending that the electricity from the nuclear power plant to Germany, which Germany, like I've said, and nobody else really talks about this, Germany wants that power. That's one reason why they shut down all of their nuclear power plants. They think, oh, maybe it's dangerous, and, you know, the Green Party and all that kind of crap. So let's just do it in Ukraine and then take the advantage of it from there, because it's cheap and it's clean energy, and you know, but a little bit dangerous. So we'll let Ukraine have the danger. Remember Chernobyl? That didn't turn out too well. Not even for Germany, by the way, but much worse for Belarus than any country. It was much worse for Belarus, Chernobyl, than it was for Ukraine. But yet Ukraine, you know how they are with their, what do you call it, grifting. They got billions of dollars from everybody when Belarus didn't get a penny. When it's right on the border of Belarus, and all of the fallout and all of the crap, most all of it went into Belarus. It didn't go into Ukraine. Oh, poor Ukraine. So, but shh, don't tell that Belarus is the one that suffered. A huge area in Belarus. I don't know how many villages and areas. You know, it's all blocked off. Some people are allowed to go in there, and you can do some farming in there, but nobody is allowed to live in that area. You know, I don't even know how the farming turns out, but that's another thing. Since I was in farming, let me just add this little note here, that after they started testing, you know, nuclear weapons and all that, that's when they discovered how they could make this chemical nitrogen, you know, some often in the form of what they call urea, and for fertilizing crops, and it heavily boosted crop production. And so that's what's used all over the world, is that sort of a thing. And that's probably why they even allow that farming in that area. I'm not sure how much farming is done, and if I've been eating any of it or anybody else. But if, like I said, they're doing that in many places in the world, and a lot of time it has to do with nuclear things. Anyhow, like I said, I don't understand it all. I just thought I'd throw that out. Maybe some of you guys know about it. Okay, let's see. Keep going. Oh, I got to keep going with some time. Anyway, I'm getting close. So Donald Trump is trying to hijack the nuclear energy as well. I'm glad that if you guys, some of you guys that follow my videos, and other people do not cover this stuff. Nobody's mentioned that except for me, I think. I haven't heard it anywhere talking about the nuclear power, that Germany wanted that, or even most people are not talking about all of these rare earth minerals. But of course, these things came about, and it became obvious when I just now told you that Germany was pissed off that that Trump made the deal with the rare earth minerals, and that Trump wants the nuclear energy because that's what Germany was banking for. So that's I mean, it doesn't spell it right out, but it shows you by that indication that Germany had their dibs on that sort of thing, and why they don't like Trump. Trump is coming in on that, and I still haven't really found out so much any of these angles about BlackRock and how they're fit in with a lot of things, And they're anyway. I've talked about BlackRock before, and I don't even remember necessarily. When something comes about in the future with some new news, I'll bring it up too. Okay, Israel last night, more massive raids against southern Lebanon. So now they, I don't know, are they still bombing Syria? They're bombing everybody around there. There's even some people from other political parties in Israel talking about the time before Netanyahu. They didn't have such great hostilities with all their neighbors. And now Netanyahu has made everybody all around Israel enemies. I guess, what is it? Out of chaos comes order. And I think, Netanyahu's already taken a big portion of Syria. And I think all of this has to do with, land acquisitions. And they've just legalized, I think it was 24 settlements in the West Bank. I'm not sure if that was that 61% of the West Bank, of the entire West Bank that they're trying to take over, or if that is just a portion of that 61%. But of course, they're on the march, and of course they said, Netanyahu said yesterday that they're going to take over all of Gaza. So boy, oh boy, oh boy, you Palestinians, I don't know, has to be some sort of a plan. And you're hearing about peace plans between Hamas and Israel, and that the hostages and all that stuff are supposed to be turned over. And I don't know if that's going to happen or not. So, this goes back and forth. Okay, there was something very interesting that I saw. And I should be talking now about Duda. But, about Stefan Bandera. But, some young girl over there. Duda, he was on some kind of he was sitting in a chair, it looked like a talk show sort of a deal, his belly hanging out there. I didn't even know he had a big fat belly like that, but it showed on this thing. He's a leader of Poland, if I didn't already just now mention that. But he basically was kind of pissed off. You never know with politicians if they're putting on acts or whatever for certain purposes. There's a Polish vote coming up, and I think very soon, and that's one reason why he was acting the way he was. And he said it's unacceptable how the Ukrainians, and I think he's talking about the government, how they love Bandera, and the Banderite ideology, in other words, Nazism. And it's notwithstanding the fact that the Polish government has their own brand of Nazism, which they certainly do. And but anyway, I don't know. You might be able to rescue the Polish government. I've said that in the past before, but sometimes the rhetoric, and they have this unquenchable thirst also to kill Russians and to invade Belarus, and they don't have an unquenchable thirst, but they have at least a desire to take over a big portion of Belarus. They want conquest on that. Anyway, why don't they go take Lithuania or something like that? Anyway, let's see. But he said he's against this. He was acting animated. I don't know if it's an act, like I say. He says all the genocide of the Bandera against the Poles, and that the authorities there, they lie to the people. They make them think that Bandera was a great guy, and I don't really know. I'm guessing it is, because I would find it hard to believe, that they are actually in favor of all of the massacres of the people, like in Belarus and in Ukraine. They massacred a lot of people, so I'm not sure if that's what he's referring to or not. But they of course do that, lying to their own people. He says when he goes to Ukraine, it sounded like a paradox kind of thing. When he goes to Ukraine, the people wearing Bandera-colored armbands thank him and hug him. He's obviously meaning that is very strange to him, but he notices, or he believes, that it was a cover-up, that the government, they cover that up. I don't really know. I doubt very, very, very much that they tell their people over there that Bandera was out for massacring. In truth, he was connected undeniably into killing millions of people. Bandera, and even the Germans were afraid of him because he was so much more extreme than the Nazis themselves. He's like an uber-Nazi, and he even bragged about cutting off the heads of 60,000 Jews and rolling them at the feet of Adolf Hitler. So, but he's a good guy, right? Wait a second. I don't know. You would think that Poland has to make some kind of decisions, Do they want to continue to be Nazis themselves and want to massacre Russians, or or do they want to be humanist peoples? And then you have to also ask them, well, why do they hate the Russians? Why do they hate them so much? If the Ukrainians, we're talking the Banderite peoples, were massacring Poles, and the Russians saved the Poles, they saved the Poles from the Nazis, so why do they hate them? And it's something about history, I don't know. They're willing to forgive, have their people getting massacred, just massacred, as the Belarusians were massacred, but they're not, I don't know. But they still, they harbor something against the Russians. Okay. I would suggest they stay out of the whole thing in Ukraine, but it's maybe too late by now. Maybe they should just now bow out and say, okay, that's it for us. We don't want any part of it. And then of course, as you think about all the people that they've shot and killed, some that did cross the border from Belarus into Poland, and they have mass killings and mass graves. And of course, that's not mentioned at all. The government does not mention that to their own people in Poland. And there's like way too many witnesses to mention that. Yes. Okay. Last night, Zelensky attacked the Kursk. I think I was mentioning this at the beginning. It was a Kursk hospital. The drone was shot down. I don't know if it was just one drone, but the debris coming down, it damaged the hospital, and one person was wounded. And the last thing I have to say is it was just put out, and I guess you can find it. I don't know. I think maybe it might be in video. I think it's in UK. It's in the UK even, and they admit to making hybrid cyber attacks against Russia. And they said they're going to increase them, like trying to sabotage the internet and cause blackouts or do whatever the heck they possibly can. And they said they're going to increase them, and they're going to be increasing them as well against China. So it's like, I don't know, sabotaging Russia's cyber infrastructure over there. So anyway, they admit to that. So just so you guys know that. And that's about it. I thank you guys for joining me. 43 minutes. And if you guys saw my notes on my yesterday's video, it took, I'll tell you what, YouTube, what they do, my video got to, I don't know, a certain percent, it was like 75% uploaded, and then the next time I looked, it was 25% uploaded. So a lot of time they stop it, or it gets maybe towards the end, 99% or whatever the deal, and it either freezes sometimes, and I think maybe it starts over again. I don't know what happened in those ones. And then, so it takes, when did I start? I started in the afternoon, right in the afternoon yesterday. So it took all the entire afternoon and the evening and the entire night and into the morning until it was actually uploaded. So I don't know if I'm going to have the same thing with this one. So technically, you guys should be getting this in the United States when you wake up in the morning, but it's not going to happen. It's probably going to be by the time you go to bed. So anyway, just letting you know that. Thanks for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.